or like you're thinking like, okay, is this ever going to be useful, or am I just wasting my time? So a bit of context, API is kind of a way where it's one of the fastest way to productize your service. So if you've been to like my other workshops, I talk about data science being either as a form of service or as a form of product. So data science as a service is kind of what you guys already know how to do, right? You create a notebook, you present the work, and people pay you money for that, whether in the form of, for example, if you work in batch HR, you sit in the meeting and your boss says, hey, I want you to go and analyze this, you do that. That's a form of service. So service is kind of there's a few big distinct characteristics that define a service-based data science work. Is that most likely when you do service-based data science work, you're your only customer. You're the only customer and you're the only one writing code, and you're the only customer. So no one ever is going to write your code, no one ever is going to be your customer. You're the only customer, because that's service-based. You communicate your insights, and usually it's a very linear flow from top to bottom. So you start your code at the top, at the bottom you return something, and that's it. That's the thing you return. API give you a quick way to go into product-based data science, and product-based is kind of where you build one time and you have hundreds of customers using it. So API is kind of one way. So for example, customer will come to you and like, hey, I want you to build a machine learning model to predict this item, and then once you do this prediction, I want you to return this result to us in a CSV. So but in the CSV, I don't care about your process, I don't care about your internal cleaning, I don't care about everything, I only care about the outcome. But I want you to predict that. So every time I ping your API, you should return that. I'll give you a very quick example of like this one that my team has just done. Hopefully you can see my screen now. So I'll show you a really quick example of that. Okay, I'm still waiting for the URL here, but okay, cohort equals to Phoenix. Keep typing the same thing because for some reason after the recording started, it takes away my control. Okay, here. Right, so you see that. So this is kind of a query parameter. This is called query parameters because this is actually trying to make a query. You expect that when I ping this API, I'm going to get a CSV back. But in my CSV, I'm only going to filter students who are from the Phoenix cohort and gender equals to female. Now, this guy can obviously change that to male, like that. And now the CSV is going to return exactly the same thing, except now it's going to be male students instead of female students. And if this guy did not specify gender, then what happened? Then this guy is going to get all the Phoenix. So if you allow the person to either specify or not specify, we call these optional parameters, optional query parameters. But you're creating an API service that allow people to query data, get CSV back in return by just changing the URL. Is that idea clear? Like, I don't know if, like, can you imagine what's happening? So for example, I can also say, what if I want to say cohort equals to Phoenix, but I want to say, I want to say scholarship equals to true. So I want you to at least get the idea first. If not, you'll be coding stuff without truly understanding stuff. So you can also set up more parameters like that. And I said, okay, now I want to filter Phoenix students, scholarship equals to true, and they don't matter. The order of things doesn't matter. So I can put gender after this. I can put gender equals to, I don't care. I don't know why you care about female and male, but let's say you care. You can do that as well. So the gender doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if gender is all the way at the bottom, in the middle, or the first query meter. It doesn't matter. The order of things doesn't matter. But your API service should be able to interpret that, accept those different either parameters or optional parameters, and then query the data, get the right thing, and then return a CSV, giving them exactly what they request for. Is this idea clear? Like, how many of you need some explanation or like needs me to elaborate further? Just ask me, okay? Don't be shy. If you're like, Sam, I don't understand. What is the benefit of this again? I still don't get it. Then just tell me. It's fine. Is that idea clear? Like, did you see these kind of patterns in your own daily usage of Facebook or your own daily usage of the internet?
It's there for me, but I think you need some answer from the other, right?
Yeah. I definitely need some answer from the other. One time I was talking about this, and I'll go into coding too soon, and we coding, and then all the way to the end, people were like, okay, why are we doing that? And I realized that was my mistake. So I don't want to follow the same thing. I want to make sure that the motivation is clear, like what is actually a query parameter before we go into that. One time I was in this class, we were doing all this code and all that stuff, and it was fun. But at the end of it, they were like, one or two of them were like, I don't understand, why do we complicate things? Why can't we just use an UI, for example? Okay, anyway, so if it's not clear, you stop me from moving forward. Okay, so now that we are clear, let's see how do we set up such a thing, and how do we create an API service that allow people to query, get results and stuff. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna start my terminal, and I'm gonna create a few folders to work with. I'm gonna zoom in so you can see clearer. So I think I'm also gonna create and I'm gonna move up here. I'm gonna clear the screen again. I was testing to see how many working environments how many virtual environments I have. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go create a new a new folder somewhere on my desktop, on my documents, up to you. But for you, if you already have a project ready to go, you can do that. I assume that some of you did not have have any project to start with, so I'm gonna start from scratch. But I'm gonna use something similar to what David is already doing, which is maybe related to students and assignments and stuff. So let's go ahead and move forward with this. Is the screen too small? If it is, you can let me know as well. But I'm just gonna go ahead now. And oh, by the way, when you do all this stuff later on, I'm currently in my folder. I'm gonna change directory to my desktop. And you can do it anywhere you want. I don't documents somewhere, and I'm gonna make a directory, and I'm gonna call it student. What is your app called, David?
My app
is there a name for it?
Academia_API.
Let's call it Academia. Let's call it Academia. Okay, we just created an app called Academia. And then what I want to do is I want to change directory to Academia straight away. So that's kind of it. So I make a directory, and then I move directly into the academy. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a virtual environment so I don't install all kind of stuff into my base root. If you don't know why a virtual environment is good, is important, I have like some videos explaining that, teach you how to set that up. So we're going to talk about that later on. But for now, I'm just going to do a work on, and I'm going to move into one of my virtual environments. So I have a lot of virtual environments. So if I show you that, so every time I teach like computer vision, I go into my CV. If I teach like banking or anything, I go into DBS. If I do go something in my email network, I go into email network, and so on and so forth. But for now, I'm gonna use the one there. So I'm gonna clear my screen real quick. You can also use Control K, Control L. Control L is the same as clear, just empty the screen. Okay, now that I'm in here, I can do a pip list to make sure that I have. I mean, you can also do the same thing right now if you're following. I'm not trying to slow down here because I thought that some of you may have this basic stuff that you should already have. But if you need me to slow down, let me know. Okay, don't worry about that. So there is I see that I have Django REST framework, that's fine. I see that I have Django, that's also fine. So really what you need is at least Django and Django REST framework. If you do not have that, you do a pip install Django REST framework. So I'm not gonna do that. But why don't you go ahead and give it a try first if you don't have that. So do a pip list and make sure you have both of them in your environment. If you don't have them, stop me for 5 seconds so you have time to install. I'm not gonna do that because I already have that and kind of want to pin it to that version. So I hope it's not too fast. I hope I'm not going at a too fast of a speed. But if it is, just stop me. Okay, we don't need to rush. We don't need to rush because we have good lunchtime later. So anyone who needs to pause a bit? So everyone has the REST framework already in Django? Belum? Masih di-install?
Yeah.
So I'm going to move down here as well. I'm going to also change the directory to my desktop, and I'm going to directly move into my Academia folder. So this is the folder that I just created, and what I'm going to do is to just really quickly just do a code dot, just set it up. Okay, you're installing that. Okay, so I'm going to wait for you. Okay, don't worry about that. I'm just going to go ahead and just create the basic skeleton first. So in this case here, all I'm doing is to just set up my code, get that open up in Visual Studio Code. So that's what it's going to do. And I'm going to bring it back to my normal one here. I'm going to move it back here. So I have nothing in the folder, which is fine. I don't really need anything in this. Could just close out the Academy. So there's nothing in here. Yeah, so we just wait for the ones who are downloading. some of you may be using conda. If you're doing conda, then you do a conda list. Then that will list all the conda packages in there. In this case here, I don't have conda installed. So I don't, that will not work. But for those of you who are using conda, that would be the way you do it. If you're using conda and you want to list all your conda environments, you do conda env list. Again, won't work for me because I don't use conda. I'm using pip. So, but those of you who are doing that, that's there. I only install from previous. Yeah, is it okay? Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, Nabila, it's all you need. So Django and just Django REST framework is all you need. Oh yeah, there's also the requirements. Yeah, .txt. Yeah, you can just do a pip. If you want to just use the requirements.txt, you just have to do a git clone or git pull, and then you just do a pip install -r requirements.txt. This -r stands for recurring. So -r recurring means that go through the requirements.txt and recursively install every single row that you see in the txt. So that basically install everything that you have in there and set it. Okay, Tommy's done. What about Victor? Sita is done. Nice. Are all of you using Visual Studio Code, or is anyone using a different setup? If you're using a different setup, let me know as well, because sometimes I'll give you some shortcuts and it may not work. And but I assume that okay, VS Code, yeah, alright, cool. I've been trying to program a lot in Vim lately, so kind of a nice editor, but I want to stick to Visual Studio Code when I'm like teaching. Okay, so so most of you are done, right? So now the next thing you do is, if you have followed along the last project, you probably would not have to do any of this. The remaining like 30 minutes, you don't have to do any of that. You just have to sit back and stuff. But if you haven't, then you can follow along to create to use Django to scaffold out a project. Django makes it really, really easy. In fact, if you wanted to, let me see if I could. Yeah, I could just show you, like, maybe for example, if you type Django Docs, it makes it really easy to just follow along. You just have to go to the official docs. I don't use any tutorials outside of this. I mean, there are like a lot of tutorials out there. I don't use any of that. Like for Django, really all you need really is to just go in there and use the official documentation. It's very, very, very quick. Give you everything you need. You can go into getting started, and you can go into like writing your first Django app. It gives you all of this stuff. It teaches you how to do any of this. So like you can go and find online, I guess, Udemy and stuff like that. But really, this is the best documentation I've seen, like directly on official documentation itself. So for example, you see that it gave you a few commands here. It says, well, to start a project, you can put Django admin start project and then put the name of the project in there. So we can just literally just copy the same thing, right? We can just say, well, let's go ahead and say Django admin. Django admin start project, and you give it a name. Now I'm gonna call it Academy as well, because that's the name of my project. You can name it anything you want. So I'm gonna go ahead and just put Django-admin start project Academia. And now if I print out the directory and I say ls, not lsd, I see there is an Academia. And if I were to change directory into Academy again, let's actually just print a tree maybe. You see that what happened is, if I print out the structure of that, I'm using tree, so I print out the structure of that. You see that I have created what this command does, Django admin start project Academia. What this project does is it creates a folder called Academia, because that's what you name it. If you name it something else, it will be something else, right? Academia within that. And then it creates a few of this. But among them that it created the most important one so far is the manage.py. So manage.py is how you manage your project. So you can use manage.py to start things, to create a new user, to all kind of things, to create a new apps and stuff. So we're gonna slowly go into each one of them one by one. But at this point, if you wanted to just take a look at stuff, you can already just do a run server. So you can say Python manage.py and do a run server, and it will basically listen to your server. Didn't have that because we haven't changed the directory into that. So let's do that. move that, and then let's run that. So now it would set up the server to start listening in this port, and all you need to do is to click on that port and bam, done. You already have a Django app running. Okay, so the rest is really just trying to make it pretty, to add functionality, to add new facilities, new users, all of this. So I'm gonna stop the server because it's not important. I don't need the server, but that's one quick way of validation. You can also specify your own port. If your port is busy, if you're not listening to 8000, you want to specify a port, you can put a port parameter and just put what port you want to listen to. For now, I won't worry about that. For now, I'm just going to keep it at the default. Yeah, David is doing a great service to everyone by putting all the commands in here. Almost what I like to do almost always is when I have a run server and stuff, I also like to just do a quick make migrations. So I would like to do a Python manage.py, make migrations real quick, look for all the migrations that I haven't made, no changes detect, that's fine, and then I do a migrate. Typically, when you first start out, there is no need for make migrations, but it's just like good. I just sort of got it into my routine now. Like every time I do a migrate, I check for make migrations, and it migrates everything. So what happened now is if I check my tree now, it says that I have a db.sqlite. Oh, that's new. That wasn't there before. So what happened? When I call a migrate, let me wait for David to paste the command in there. Python manage.py migrate. Let me do that. Python manage.py migrate. Okay, so what migrate does is it looks at all the files that needs to be migrated. If you don't understand all this migration and stuff, you need to watch my first video, the first product team learning day, the 3 hours video. I talk about why migration is important. It allows you to sort of version control your DB, which is really, really nice. And we did a few migrations in the last video as well, so you need to watch that. But right now, I want to show you the big differences. The first time we run the tree command, we don't have any of this. But now that we run the tree command again, bam, we have a db.sqlite, right? And this is cool because now I can open up that, I can go and find my folder. I can go into that folder and I will see the DB in there. And if you have a DB editor, for example, you can use Table Plus and I can open that up. Obviously, best practice is to change the statics.py to make sure you're using something like Postgre or something, not the SQLite. But for now, it's good enough. Let's keep to this one. So I just did. If you don't know what the SQL editor is, you can use anyone. If you don't know what Table Plus is, you can use any SQL editor you want. But just as long as something that allows you to quickly open a SQLite file and see it. But it creates all of these tables for you. This is all Django's behavior, not your behavior. You did not program anything yet. This is all provided to you by Django. Okay, so I'll pause here a bit to see. I assume that there are some questions here and there. Hey, if you have questions, just unmute, just ask yourself. Just ask questions, okay? Bahasa English is fine. Don't be shy. Come on, we're all teaching in front of people all the time. Like, you shouldn't be shy. Your students should be shy. It shouldn't be you. So you guys are acting like students again. Yeah. Anyone have questions up to this point?
Okay, Sam. Not yet. No.
Got it. Yeah. What about Dia? Any question? Handu, Tommy, ada questions kak? Ina, ada questions?
Ina have questions, Sam.
Yeah, yuk.
Go ahead, man.
Go ahead. Pertanyaan itu apa?
She asked me, should we run the Python manage py migrate?
Yeah, you should. So running migrate basically creates the DB. Prior to creating the migrate, prior to running the migrate, if you see my logs up here, before I do my migrate, you see that this is what I have. I don't have a lot of folders or files in here. I have one folder. I have 5 files within that, and I have a manage.py. That's all I have. But running migrate, basically what it does is that it says, okay, let's take a look at all the different apps that you have. So in this case, that's the one app, and it says what needs to be done, and it creates those things. So in this case here, the big changes here is that it creates a cache folder, and then it creates a SQLite tree database. This thing can be changed. If you go into your Visual Studio Code later, let me show that to you right now. If you go into this one, so type settings.py. I mean, you can also click on the left. I typically try to recommend, if you're very new to Visual Studio Code, I recommend you don't ever use the mouse to find files and find folders. Like right now, if I'm in here, right, and I ask you to go to urls.py, a lot of people like to go and click on this and then search for URLs. That's a lot of work to do, okay? That's taking up your bandwidth. Don't do that. What I recommend you do is hit Control P or Command P, directly type urls.py. Try that right away. Press enter, opens that up. Okay, if I ask you to go to settings, don't ever use your mouse, move there, move. There's too many context switching. So what I want you to do, Control P, settings. Press enter. Okay, so try to keep your hand on your keyboard without moving around to your mouse and then moving back, moving. So those are things. If you want to create a terminal up there, you want to blow out a terminal, you hit Control backtick. So Control backtick gives you the terminal right down here. And then you can maybe close this one if you want to, but up to you, right? But Control backtick, if you want to hide this one, Control backtick again. Okay, so Control backtick, that would Control backtick, that would hide, that would open like this. So my point being, try to learn the shortcuts because you're gonna spend a lot of time on this and you want to be fast. So same thing here. If I ask you to search, go to settings, then I want you to just try to not use your mouse and just type Command P and type settings.py. And then once you're in here, I want you to type Command F and search for Sqlite. And I want you, this is the engine. So this is, we add a command here. We say to do. We want to change this to Postgre. So at some point, right now we don't have to worry about that, but we add a simple to-do because later you can quickly find all the to-dos and you work on those things. Right now we don't have to worry about that. We just say, okay, Sqlite is fine. We keep that for now. But because when you say this is Sqlite is default, yeah, Control P for Windows user, thank you. So because this is the default, Sqlite, so when you do a migrate just now, it creates the Sqlite for you. Okay, if you actually put in like a Django, a Postgre backend, it would populate your Postgre backend, but you need to specify the username, the password, and stuff. Okay, so now you have a completely new database with all these tables in there already. If you have a SQL table, SQLite editor, for example, you can click on that, right click on that, open, and you can look at items in all the tables, right? For example, I can look at authentication user. There's nothing in the authentication user because we haven't even done that yet. So what do we do? Let's go and create a new user. Okay, shall we? Let's go ahead and say Python manage.py, and we say make super user or create super user. And when you create a super user, it asks you for a couple of things. It says, okay, I'm gonna create a super user. You're gonna be the super admin to manage everything. You can log in, you can log out. In this case, it says give me a username. I'm gonna press empty. I'm gonna leave blank because it's gonna use SAML, and I want it to be use SAML, so I'm gonna say nothing. Email. I'm gonna put my work email. So this is where Django provides a lot of out-of-the-box functionality. When later on when you implement like reset password or forget password, it can send an email directly to this algorithm.ma and allow you to reset your password. And all of this, you don't even have to code for that. Imagine using like Flask. Imagine using some sort of things that you have to code your own. There's a lot of work you need to do. You know, create a server, learn how to send SMS through SMTP, do all this stuff. This is all provided to you for free, out of the box, completely for free. So I'm gonna just do that right away. Password, I'm gonna put my password, and I'm gonna repeat my password. And then it says super user created successfully. How do we know that? Well, one thing we can do is refresh the DB. Refresh, oh, there we go. Okay, so I want you to just go through one process like that just to get yourself familiar with it. Even though you have done it before, just follow along. Just follow along and get some hands-on practice. You can create multiple super users if you want to. Those of you who have already done my first course, you're fine. Like the first product team learning day, you're fine. But those of you who haven't, try to do that. So don't just sit back and look, but also try to write the code you see here. So the code here is Python manage.py. So let me type that in here. And you type create super user and you put in your own username and password. Like this. So I'm gonna wait for you a bit. Username, you can put in any username. If you leave blank, you just have to press enter, and it will just create it will just use your host name, which is in this case not the user of the on your machine.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat about get super user? Because my internet is not stable, so I don't get the explanations.
Who's that? Who's asking?
It's me, Victor.
Oh, we good. All right. So yeah. So to create a super user, what you need to do, I can actually go ahead and delete this one. It's fine. So I can just delete this, and when you delete that, you just have to I can show you the backend later. But what you do is you say Python manage.py and you say create super user. This will ask you for two or three questions. The first question is username. This is optional if you put nothing. So if I press enter, it says, okay, hold on a second. What is your email? What is your username? And in this case here, because I already use Samuel, I can put another one. I can say Victor. So it says, okay, give me a email address for that. So I'm going to say victor@algorithm.ma. So you want to press enter after that. Okay, then you press enter. Password. Again, this won't show. It won't come out on the terminal, but you will have to assume that it's there. So press enter. Password again. Victor123. Enter. Okay. Password is too similar to the username. Password is too common. Bypass. Yes. So Django provides a lot of like very nice functionality. One of that is that if the password is too simple, too easy to guess, it will reject it and ask if you want to bypass it anyway. Now this is because you're using it from the manage.py console. But on the front end, the user will be rejected and asked to create a better password. In this case, I put Victor123. It doesn't like that. It says it's too simple because your username is Victor. How come your password is Victor123? So it complains about that. In this case here, I just bypassed it. I said, nah, it's fine. I know what I'm doing. And so it created. So let me go ahead here and refresh. I'm going to discard this and refresh. Bam. Now I have two users. Okay, Victor, is that clear?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah. Can you guys try to create a user for your own? Like, I don't know what you want to call it, but just create one. I'm going to change my environment here to be, where's my architect? Oh, here. Okay.
Sorry, Sam. I got lost. How do you open the Sqlite?
How do I open the Sqlite? Okay, so I go to exactly the file, exactly the folder that I find. So for example, I can type into I'm in the Sqlite is in the Academia folder, right? So you just have to go into that Academia folder and you just have to say this one and open with Table Plus or open with anything that you have there. Some of you may be using Workbench. It's probably fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, keep the questions coming. If not, I'm not teaching you anything. I mean, if you're not asking me questions, it makes me feel insecure because I feel like maybe you guys already know this stuff. Makes me feel insecure, like I'm wasting your time. So keep the questions coming. Okay, all set, all good. Aman? Okay, no questions, right? All right, so let's go back here. I'm gonna create an app then. So I'm gonna say Python manage.py and start app, and now you can create. So Django works a bit strange. Some people don't like it. Some people find it's a bit strange. But Django works like that. Django says, okay, this is the whole thing is a project. Within the project, we have all these small different things called the app. So there is a big project. Our project name is called Academia, but within that, there's different apps in a way. So for example, I can create an app and I can call this app the quiz app. Okay, create a quiz app. So this will handle the quiz app within the Academia project. So within this big project itself, there is multiple features. We group all the features into like smaller apps. So I have a quiz app, I have a classroom app, I have an onboarding app, I have a capstone app. So I can maybe create a capstone app, right? Just call it capstone. So I'm gonna just say that, enter, and that will create a new app. And how do I know it's done? I can check the tree, and it creates a whole folder called capstone, and within it, it creates all the models, the tests, the views, the apps. It creates all of this for me. Okay, so when I say start, obviously the name is capstone here because I name it capstone. So you can create a few apps here. So I can create another app here. I can go ahead and say I want to create another app. This one I want to call enrollment. And now if I point out the tree, it's gonna create another enrollment folder with all of the same things. So an app is complete when it has things like the models, views, and the URL. The admin is kind of optional, but you can have admin because you have the admin backend. Okay, so that's that. And if you don't want that, you can just remove the app later. So if I list now, if I list now, okay, there's the academia, there's the capstone, there's the enrollment. I'm gonna remove enrollment, so I don't need that. Okay, so I only have capstone. And if you don't understand what I'm doing here, like remove and stuff, you can use the mouse, you can do that. That's remove, that's basically deleting a folder. But I strongly encourage, if you have time, to learn enough of the Unix so you can do all of this fast without having to use the mouse and go into desktop or right click, delete, right click, copy, paste. Like copy and pasting, I would just use MV and move, copy this one to that one. But anyway, I think learn a bit of that because it makes you faster, which is always a good thing. So I'm going to clear my screen now. And now that I have that, if I go into my Visual Studio Code, I should see that I have my capstone project in here. Okay. So again, I want you to Command P quickly into settings. And within settings itself, I want you to go into install apps, and I want you to add the new app that you just installed. So in this case here, the one that I just installed is called Capstone. So I'm going to do Capstone. If you call it differently, you want to give it a different name. Press enter. So if you have multiple apps, typically what I do is and then I would typically have something like third party, maybe something you find from GitHub. Oh, this is good. This is where we can have REST framework. And then finally, I would have something like local apps. Local apps is things that you created yourself, and that's it. I kind of like to structure it like that, and maybe just for consistency's sake, I'll remove this line as well. So just gonna do to remove a line is Command Shift K or Control Shift K. That remove a line. Yeah, that's kind of it. So if you have a lot of local apps later, you can also have like student enrollment. Let's say you have an app called payroll, like that, right? But for now, let's not be too ambitious. Let's just keep it like that. In Django, in Python, it's fine to actually be leaving a comma. So in Python, it's fine to actually say something like ls equals to 1, 2, 3, comma. This is fine. I know you don't want to do that in like languages like R, for example, but in Python, this is fine. You can also do something like if you want this to be a tuple, you can say a tuple, and you can have 1, A, B. You can also have something like that. It's okay with a trailing comma. This is called a trailing comma pattern. Okay, that's fine. So we'll keep it there. Why do we wanna, like, what is the advantage of keeping a trailing comma? The big advantage is when you use GitHub, Git control, version control, when you add a new local app, when you add something new, let's say I add a new one. I said new app here. In version control, if I use the trailing comma pattern, then the version control, the Git will recognize that I added one line. I did not have to modify this line to add a comma. But if I did not have a comma, if I don't use the trailing comma pattern, I will now have to put a comma, and now Git will think that you actually modified 2 lines. Because it thinks that, okay, you modify line 46 because you have to remove the old 46 and you add a new 46 with the comma, and then you added line 47. So from a Git perspective, it looks like you modify 2 things when you truly only modify 1 thing, which is to add a new app. So I mean, there's a lot of other benefits, but in production, like a lot of people would recommend that you just add a trailing comma. So in that case, it's very clear to Git what is being version controlled. Like, okay, this is the line and stuff, and other benefits, but this is one of them. This is the biggest kind of why people like to add a trailing comma. So in this case here, we have the trailing comma, we have the new app, and we have the local apps, we have the third-party apps, and I sort of break them out like that, so it's easy to see where it belongs to which. So in this case here, REST framework is something that you installed already, so you don't have to manually do anything. You just have to add it in here. So this is all the installed apps. Okay, so we save this file, and once you save this file, you can go back to your console, wherever the console would be, whether it's a built-in one or external one, and from there you can go ahead and do something like manage.py, Python manage.py, and you say run server. And now, fingers crossed, everything still works perfectly. No trouble, still works perfectly. And you can also click on the /admin and you can log into the admin portal. So what is the username and password? That depends on what you enter in here. So I created 2 admin account here. I'm free to use whichever one. I'm going to use the one Samuel. So I'm going to use this one. And I'm going to use the one here. Log in. Okay. And if I go into users, I should still be able to see all of that. Like Samuel, I should see Victor and stuff. So why don't you go ahead and try that? Okay. So step 1, make sure that this is not too fast. Python manage.py run server. It will give you what port is it listening. You click on that, it brings up that portal, and then you put a /admin. So you run, click on that one. It says, oh, I'm listening here. So you click on that one, and now it says the install worked successfully. There is nothing in here yet, but let's go into the admin. If you cannot do this, this is not successful, then make sure you have done migration. If you haven't done migration, none of this will work, right? And the second is to make sure that you already have a super user. Now I have a super user, and so you realize that even though I close this site out and I log back in again, it doesn't ask me to sign in again. Why is that? Because it uses something called a session. How do we know this is true? Let's check the database. If you go into a database and you click on session, you see that after the first login, it caches your session, and it says that your session will expire on the 10th of December. So from now on, all the way to 10th of December, as long as I'm on this device, on this client, I will be able to, this is the data that is associated with that. So I don't have to keep on logging in, logging out, logging in, logging out. This is kind of like how Facebook works as well. When you log into Facebook on your computer, you would always have, oh, kalau lupa password, yeah. You can also change password, reset password, or you forget the password, yeah.
Yeah, so password for admin.
Yeah, you can do a Python manage.py, reset password somewhere, probably somewhere in here. I don't even know if there's a thing. Create a new super user, I guess. Oh yeah, the other way you can do is to go into a shell and then create a new. Oh here, change this one. Python manage.py, change password, and you put in the username. So if your username is admin or Samuel, you put Samuel like that.
Okay. Let me try.
Okay, I'll show you like that. That's method number 1. Method number 2 is go into the shell, Python manage.py shell.
Okay, success.
Success, right? Method number 2 is to go into shell, and then you say, okay, from Django contrib.auth.models, import user. And I have 2 users in here. So let me say, well, what do I miss out here? Okay, because I haven't really, let me exit off this first. Quit. I haven't work on architect. So let me go into that one.
Kamu ikut yang mana?
Okay. Can't open file, user Samuel, manage.py. Okay. So I think I know the reason now. List. Okay, so I need to change to this one. And manage.py is here. Yep. Okay, now let's do that. Python manage.py shell. Let's get in there. And let's say from, this is method number 1 is that. Method number 2 is to just go into the shell and then just change that from there. So for example, I want to change the username and stuff. I can say user.objects.get, and I can say get. In this case, I can just get the last one because I know that's the last one. So that's a Victor guy, right? So I can say Victor guy. Okay, Victor guy is gonna have a new username now. I can say username, and it's Victor. But I can say no. I actually want to change that now. I'm not gonna give him Victor. I'm gonna call him Tommy now, like that. So I can call that, and I can say save. And if I do that, if I check my DB into my user, I should see that this got updated to Tommy. If I change this to David, and I save, yeah, I refresh the page, it goes into David. So there's another way to do that. You can use the shell to sort of change things. The other way you can do that, okay, so let's just skip to these two methods, and you can, in this case, if you forgot the password, you can just say, okay, I'm gonna basically take this guy, and I'm gonna say set a password, and give a new password. And I'm gonna say, don't forget me anymore. So Hussein doesn't forget the password anymore, right? So the password is, don't forget me anymore, and I say u.save. This is nice because it automatically hashes everything. So this is important because it means that your database is very secure. Even if somebody were to hack your database, the password is not stored in plain string. As a rule, never store anything in plain string. Never. Don't store your password in any kind of database, whether it's a Sqlite, Postgres. Never store in plain string. Always hash it. Always make sure that it's secure. So even the admin himself doesn't actually know the password for this one. So if you use Facebook, for example, even Facebook himself, even the Facebook developers do not know this stuff. Okay, so so make sure that you do that. Actually, as a sort of an aside, if you're interested in learning about like hashing algorithms and SHA-256 and all the different encryption and decryption and stuff like that, next year I'm launching a course on that, on cryptography. So next year, hopefully, we get to do this. I get to show you all the cool ways you can do with all the cool things you can do with cryptography. Or maybe we can do it for next internal learning day. But today I don't want to go into that one. Anyway, let's stick to this one. Now that you know how to set your password, make sure you set your password in here. You save it, and I'm going to just keep the shell there. So I'm going to just open up a new one, I guess, like that. And I'm going to change directory to desktop academia, and I'm going to change directory to academy again, and I'm going to release that. Just making sure it's here. All right, cool. And then I'm going to move that back up here. Okay, so I'm going to keep this in here. Okay, any other questions? Have you guys managed to get into the admin?
Aman, Sam.
Yeah. What about the rest? What about the less vocal minority? You see that because we create a super user, we say create super user, we see that the staff status here is a green check marks. It says that, okay, this is a staff. If this guy is no longer a staff, you say, oh, David is no longer a staff. Okay, let's kick him out. You can just cross this staff status and take away the super user, and you save it at the bottom. And if you do that, now all of a sudden David cannot log in anymore because he's not a staff, he's not a super user. I mean, he can still log in, but he cannot do all the things that admin can do. For now, let's keep David as a staff and super user. Yeah, we're gonna kick Hussein out from the staff and from the super user. If any one of you have actually used Corgi before, the back end of Corgi is exactly the same as this because Corgi is built on Django as well. Okay, so far so good. We haven't even talked about like Django REST framework first yet, but so far, what time do we need to go for our Jumat? Like, do we have like 30 minutes left? How much time do we have left? $30 minutes? Around 30 minutes, yeah. Just skip to about 11:30. Okay, let's try to end at 11:30, and if we need to resume, we resume after the whole, like after lunch and all those things. So let's take a look at what they asked us to do here. They said migrate, we already done that. They said do this, we've already done that. One server, we already done that. Or this is what I talk about. Like if you want to pass a different port, you can do a different port, but the default is to listen to 8000. You can set. Sometimes you have a lot of different ports like React on one hand and stuff. For now, you don't have to worry about that. We've done that. We already quit. All of this is done. Well, let's create our first view then, I guess, and then we can move things into, or maybe we don't even. We can just sort of bypass all of that, I guess. Yeah, let's just bypass all of that. Let's just move really fast. We don't need to do views and stuff. Database, we talked about that already. Creating models. Okay, we haven't done this yet, so let's create the models. Okay, now I want you to go into models.py for your capstone project. Go to models.py. Models.py is how you create your model logic, your database logic. Okay, so again, don't use the mouse. Don't use the mouse. Don't be weak. Instead, what we're gonna do is to type Control P and we type models.py and find the one, and you create your models here. Okay. So try to get into good habits so you don't it makes you move a lot faster rather than using the mouse, finding things, and then scrolling up and down. Don't do that. Control P, go type models.py. Control P, models.py, enter, opens up models.py. And then once you're in here, it says what? It says create a few models. So let's create a few models. It doesn't matter what we have here, but let's create a few one. This is capstone. So I want to have like capstone project. And this is gonna be models. Oh my god, man! Like I just accidentally type and it gave me the whole thing. I was about to. Okay, but I mean this is pretty good. This gives me everything I need. But let's go ahead and create a few others. Let's go ahead and I want to give this like the mentor, or let's say the creator of the capstone. I guess user creator of the capstone. And here I want to import the user. So I want this to be a foreign key. Foreign key. Why is it foreign key? Because it needs to be authentication user. So in here you can also import the authentication. So you can also say from Django.contrib.auth.models import user. And then you can also change this to something like, you can control this out, and you can say something like this as well. This is also fine, like this. Either way, like you want to do that, you can skip to this one. But in a way, I want to make sure that every capstone I can assign to a creator. I said, okay, this creator is the guy that created the. If you feel like I'm going too fast here, it's because probably you haven't really watched the first video. So learn about that. Try and, before you even write code, learn how to create an ERD. Create an ERD, create an entity diagram. Put clarity on your thoughts into that. It doesn't matter what you want to do, e-commerce or not. Your own app, your own project in the future, a future business you want to start, anything you want to do, you diagram that first before you start to write code and punch away. Okay, so turn off your computer, use a pen, use a paper, find a notebook, sketch out the models of that the ERD, and then you translate that there. I always recommend that kind of systematic approach rather than just like going in there and typing a bunch of code and thinking on the fly. Don't do that. Okay, what other things I want here? I want some expiry date. I want to have every capstone should have an expiry date, so I'm going to have models. And in here, I'm going to put a date field because that would makes the most sense. You can have some default. In this case, I don't really need a default, so I'm just going to keep it there. And what else do I have in the capstone? What else is probably useful in a capstone?
Topic.
Okay, topic. So this could be a car field. And again, I can give it a max length, but topic is probably going to be shorter. I'm going to give it 128. So that's good enough. Maybe a specialization. And here again, I can have a foreign key, and I will foreign to specialization, but it doesn't exist yet. So let's go ahead and create that. Models.model, and I'm going to say name. And then I'm going to say description. This is all standard stuff. And then specialization, I'm going to maybe give it a number of hours. So how long to complete this? And this would be a simple integer field. And now I can model this as specialization. And on delete model.cascade. So for example, what happened here? In this case, I actually think that it probably makes more sense to set now. So if I deleted the specialization because I said, oh, we're no longer offering that as specialization. We're no longer doing human analytics. It's no longer a thing. So what happened if all the field that is referencing this value, what should happen to this field? So in this case, we said if we deleted the people analytics, the one that has people analytics in this value, they are going to be replaced with a null. So that's what I say. In your case, you may, depending on the logic, you may change things up there and say how you want that to have, want that to be. That's good enough. That's good enough. We're gonna have our models.py. That's good enough. Okay. So if I go back here and say, okay, I've already done that. Let's move on. Let's move on. Activate the model. That's done. He said, okay, create a make migration. So we'll do that, and then install app. That's also done. Make migration. Okay, so let's go ahead and do our make migration now. So I'm gonna go ahead here, and I'm gonna say, make sure that I have my manage.py. So Python manage.py make migrations again. Because why? Because it needs to create all this table into our database. Okay, so wait, hold on a second. We haven't do that. We haven't activated our environment. So let's do that. Make migrations. If you make all the migration, it said, do you want me to create a model? This is what I did. And we can check that. We can check that by going into the initial.py. And here is what it's gonna do. So it's gonna make migrations, basically create this script. It runs this migration script that create this, and this is basically how it's gonna populate your DB. So if you wanna modify things, you will modify things. I will tell you in 80%, maybe even 90% of the time, you don't want to touch this file anymore. For me, sometimes there will be the 10% of time where I change things. Maybe I say that, okay, wait, hold on a second. Actually, I kind of want description after this one or something. There is a few things that where I think this could get very messy, where you have to absolutely manually change things, because this is not 100% bulletproof. Sometimes it will this order will create a conflict in the DB and you will have to modify things. But I would say like for 80 to 90% of the time, you don't have to modify this. There will be the 10% of time, but that is more like advanced usage that I'll talk about. That talks about like polymorphism. If you don't know what polymorphic models is, don't worry about that. But at some point, maybe in right now, it's like this is the second part of the series number 2, right? When we do series number 3 or 4, when I go into more advanced usage, I talk about polymorphic model. I'll show you when you need to modify this. Right now, you don't have to, but let's take a look what it's gonna do. It's gonna go ahead and look at your DB, and it's gonna create the right things for the DB. For example, I'm using Sqlite. When I use Sqlite, let me show you what I mean by that. Yeah. If I go into my models.py, this is an integer field, but it turns out I can actually do something even better. I can do something like positive small integer field. But not every DB is going to support positive small integer field. What is positive small integer field? This one basically is what did it say? Mean value. Okay, so that's not this one. Range is 0 to I think 1 something, some crazy number. I think 1, 3, 5, like something like that. But basically it cannot be negative, and it only up to a certain amount. Okay, so in this case here, number of hours seems like a pretty good fit to actually have that. So you can, but the problem here is that Django needs to support every kind of database that it supports. So when you do a manage.py, it's gonna try and create the right thing for your right database. For some reason, I'm not able to select this one. Yeah. So in this case here, it's gonna say that, okay, if you're using Postgre and it doesn't support that, then I'm gonna find another way to create something that you want. So it's gonna automatically, quite intelligently, not very foolproof, not always foolproof, but with most times give you the right thing that you need to do. So this is the script that it created, but it doesn't actually do anything on your database. It only creates this stuff for you. So to take this script and actually apply that to your DB, what do we need to do? We do a migrate. So make migrations, create this file for you. You can look at the file, close the file, modify things if you want, then you say migrate. Now remember, when you do migrate, right? When you do migrate, it doesn't matter anymore how much you change things here, because when you do migrate, it only applies this, the script that you created. So if you change things here, you need to do a make migration again to update your script. Okay, so in this case, when I say migrate, let's see what it does. Let's go ahead. Now it's gonna put all of those things into my DB. So let me open up my DB now. Refresh the DB, bam. What do we have? Capstone, specialization. Okay, I'm gonna give you a second so you have some time to sort of follow through the process and make sure you also get to this point. But now your DB is more complete. This is kind of like getting closer and closer to production ready. Now you have your right tables and stuff. How do we bring it to the next step? Wire that up to admin and views and stuff, and then we add REST framework in there. And while you do that, I'm gonna go and get myself some more milk. So give me a second. Okay, got myself some more milk. So far so good. Is everyone following along? Anyone is like stumbling and like can't really keep up or anything? Questions? I'm just sort of following the guideline that they recommend that you learn through. So I'm just looking at the docs and said, okay, this is how they've recommended, and I'm trying to follow as close to that as possible, but using our own example. The other thing you can do now is you can go to the admin.py. Again, don't use the mouse. Control P, admin.py, type that in, and then you want to import that. So I'm gonna say from dot models import, and what do we have here? We have our specialization and capstone. So specialization, capstone, okay, and then that would give you what you need. You say admin.site.register specialization capstone. So that is how you register these two models onto your admin, like this. And if I open that up, okay, it's still running. So let's go and get this. If we refresh the page or click on this one, go to home, you will see capstone and specialization. So in this case here, now I can already use the admin. Immediately I can already do that. I can say add admin specialization. I can call this a data visualization specialization. This is a 50-hour course for data visualization for a brighter, for data visualization for learners who want to get their first, who want to take their first step into the was field of data visualization. Okay, number of hours, I'm just gonna randomly put 50, and I'm gonna save. And now I have one. This is not very pretty, is it? Not very pretty. It's like special object 1. What is that? It looks ugly. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. So how do we change that? Let's go back into here. Let's again Control P, models.py. What do? We go to specialization and we give it a representation. We say string and we say return self name. I can put a bracket. I can put something like this. Self name, and I can put self number of hours and hours, something like that. Okay, refresh the page. Oops, okay, did I break something? Okay, bam, now it's updated. It's up to you how you want to change this. This is the representation. This is changing how it's visualized. I want to put a name and I put a bracket, and then how many hours would that be? So this is gonna how this is how it will show up. And now we're ready to go into REST framework. Finally, we have all the basics set up. Now let's create an API service, or maybe after the 11:30. I don't want to rush things, right? But now we have the foundation. So even if you did not follow the first part of the product team learning day, this should get you the right foundation, because now we're free to talk about API, because now we actually have some objects we can create. But before we get there, we still have like 15 minutes. So we don't want to rush. I don't want to like right now go into API. I want us to have a good lunch and have a good time, and then we can talk about that. But any questions so far up to this point? Any questions I can help answer?
Sam.
Yeah.
How to add data on our database API? Yeah, if we have JSON data.
If you have JSON data, that's really simple to do. If you have JSON data already, you use a serializer. So you use a serializer. You consume the JSON and you change things. I haven't really talked about that, but I can show you some example. Let me show you that. All good to go. We resume from where we left off, which is at the models.py. Anyone have questions so far up to this point? No questions so far?
No, for me.
No questions? All right. So then, well, let's go ahead and talk about the API problem, okay? Now, the thing here is that everything you do in right now up to this point, everything that you're doing, you're actually creating Python objects, you're creating Python models, you're creating Python logic, and this is also where you write like your machine learning code, your machine learning logic. You do your pre-processing, your cleaning, your transformation, your pandas. You bring in all the pandas and stuff like that directly in here. But what happens if you want to have this communicated to the app, right? Now the app itself is going to run in the web browser. The web browser doesn't understand Python.
Recording in progress.
So you can't actually open up a web browser. For example, if you open up a web browser like that, you can't actually go in here and you can't code Python. It doesn't understand that. So if I were to send over a machine learning model, let's say a random forest model, a TensorFlow model, I don't know if you can see my screen. I'm gonna zoom in a lot here, just to be able to show it to you here. Just zoom in like crazy here, and you can't do things that you expect to work. For example, you can't say x equals to like true. Like this true itself doesn't make sense because true is not defined. Well, you say, wait, hey, hold on a second. True is a primitive it's a boolean. It's a Python boolean. Why does that not work, right? So things like that. So how do you need a way to actually take your Python objects, and this is where the magic of serialization happens. So we need to take the Python object and we need to serialize it into something that the browser can understand. And this thing could be something like it could be HTML, CSS, JS, but very commonly we do JS, and so very commonly this will become a JSON object, something that the browser can understand. Okay, so this is kind of what it's the whole point of that. JSON, the browser can understand, but if you put in Python code like true, like just this capital TRUE, it's not gonna understand. It's gonna complain and like, hey, you return a list of prediction true false. It doesn't understand. It will complain about that. It says true is not defined. All right. So this is kind of the whole point of why you need to do some sort of serialization. So you're serializing from Python code to JSON, and then you can also do the reverse. So what about the user entering some sort of figure on the web browser in JSON? How do you take that and how do you take JSON and deserialize it back into Python so you can continue to work with it in TensorFlow, right? So that's the process, a two-way process of serializing and deserializing. So we use the word serialize a lot because that's what the documentation use as well. So let's go ahead right now and go ahead and create a so right now you're in your Visual Studio Code again, and there is models.py. So let's go ahead and create our serializers, shall we? So first thing, you can use Control-N to just create a new one and then save it. If you want to use the mouse, you can also click on plus, and then here you say serializers.py. Serializers.py, spell it with a Z, not an S. Serializers.py. You press enter, and here you create your serializers. Now make sure this is in the path of academia and capstone serializers. So create a new file called serializers.py. Here we're gonna use a lot of the facilities that REST framework provide us. So if you look at the docs itself, it provides you a lot of things. It gives you, for example, you have like from REST framework import serializer. So let's actually just take that one. Okay, so let's say from REST framework, this is the one that you installed. Import serializers, and from here we can start creating our classes. So here we start creating classes, but before we do that, we also need to bring in other stuff. So let's go ahead and do that as well. So from models import, I'm gonna try and drag this to the bottom, maybe like that. So okay, so here I have serializers and imports and capstone. So I'm gonna say from models import specialization and capstone, because these are the two things that I want to import from here. So I define the specialization here. Of course, if your case is a little bit different, then you want to modify your examples. But I'm using something similar to David's example. David's I took inspiration from him. So there's gonna be specialization and capstone. If this is not, then you want to just bring in the right name. Okay, and then we start creating our classes. And so we say class, and here a very common convention is to just name whatever that is and then add serializer. So for example, here will be specialization, and then that will be specialization serializer, and then capstone will be capstone serializer. So let's copy this and let's do the same thing here for capstone. And I'm gonna explain what they are so you don't just blindly copy and paste, okay, the fields is gonna be different, so we don't want the fields to be like that. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna just say fields equals to wait, hold on a second, where's the capstone here? Here. So this is ID name. Okay, so this is not, we need this to have number of hours as well. And here we just put everything. Okay, your question may be like, hold on a second, Sam. You have name, description, number of hours because you define it, but where did ID come from? Now ID come because it inherit from this. This is very basic OOP, right? You inherit from the parent class, which is models.model. So that class itself the attributes of that is also inherited. So ID actually is inherited from the parent class models.model. So ID comes in from there, name is here, description is here, number of hours is there. I feel like a few of them just drop off. So okay, so my serializers basically take, let me just actually drop it to the right so you can have the full length to compare. I need to maybe move this to the on, because all my chats and windows are opening up, like the chat section is also opening up, so I can't really move all the way to the right. So let me do that again this time. Move it like that. Okay, now it works. Now I drag my windows back up and then I drag my participants list down and I drop my chat section. I want to have all these windows open so if you ask a question, I can see your question. So that's why. Okay, so this is how it looks like so far. We have specialization on the, we have serializers on the right. We created two serializers. One is the specialization. One is for, this is different, this is for capstone. Okay, so you obviously this will come in from your import. So if you import, you forgot to import that, you will not have that. So you want to make sure you import that first. And then fields, now I show you another shortcut is that you can just do it all. All is gonna just say, instead of actually typing that out like that, well, just all of that, man. Just give me everything, man. So like that's kind of what I'm doing. All right. So specialization serializer, that basically I define a few class meta. There's a few things I can do here, but I don't want to go into all those details yet. I'll show you like slowly one by one. Those things are a little bit more like intermediate level. I probably don't want to talk about that. We just have to define a class meta, but you can actually define your own class. For example, I can say something like specialization, who is the lead instructor, and I can say that's the lead instructor, and I can define my stuff in here, and then I can have my lead instructor like that. Like this is fine, but these are, you know, a little bit like, I don't know if it's really gonna be instructor, so instruct like that. So you can also do this. This is also fine, right? But you know, at this point, probably don't worry about that first, and then later we can add those things in. So just get the basics out first. So I'm gonna have specialization, and I'm gonna have my capstone. So that's my serializers. If you want to, you can also just have this whole thing up here and just delete all of that and just have the all like that. All is gonna just give you everything. But I want to show you two ways of doing it. That's why I'm you know, using different methods here. So once you have that, you save it. Now you have your serializers in there. So really what you're trying to do is to just use the facilities that is provided to you. So REST framework is going to handle a lot of those things. It just needs you to tell it the basic items, like what is the model from and what fields do you want me to include. Well, if you don't want to include the description, if you don't want that to be returned from the API, so for example, I want description to be appearing in my database. I want it to be accessible from my admin portal. I want to be able to go to /admin and change my description, but I do not want that to be exposed from my API. Meaning the API endpoint itself, they do not provide description. If you call the API, you're going to get the name, you're going to get number of hours, you're going to get ID, but you're not going to get it. If you don't want that, you can just remove it like that. Okay, so you can include or exclude any kind of fields that you don't want or you want. In my case here, let's just keep everything, and then once we see the UI, I'll explain that a little bit easier. It's a little bit easier to explain that way. So right now we just keep everything in there, and then this one I'm just going to put all. Any questions so far?
Yeah, I have some.
Sure.
Tadi kan to disconnect. Sorry, can you explain it again about the serializer?
Oh yeah, sure. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you see the when I showed you that if I use a browser and I try to create Python products, Python objects, it doesn't work. So for example, if I say x equals to true, you would expect that this should work, but it doesn't, right? And the reason it doesn't work is because true itself is a Python. This is a Python primitive, meaning if we try to return something like that to the view, we expect it to work, but it doesn't because this is not understood by the browser. So the browser only understands a very, very specific set of language, and Python is not one of them, right? So serializers is the act of trying to take what Python provides us and to try and serialize it into something that the browser can understand. And very commonly, that is going to be the JSON. So we're going to take something like Python or R or Ruby or whatever you want, and all of them have to go through a serialization process so that they come back to a JSON object so that the browser can understand. So in Python and in R and Ruby, you can actually create your own machine learning model. You can use MATLAB if you want. You can use any language to create anything as long as you find a way. As long as you find a way to package it into something that the browser can understand. Probably you can say that what about JavaScript? Well, JavaScript, they don't have to go through serializers because JavaScript is natively understood by web browser. So so this is kind of the act of taking Python, SQL, Ruby, or SQL, whatever that is, because you cannot put SQL in here as well. You cannot just take, let me take something out from a database and push it to my web browser so my user can see. Or let me take a machine learning model from TensorFlow and push it to the user. The TensorFlow is not understood by a web browser. He doesn't know what to do with it. Okay, but Python knows what to do with it. So what do you want? You want an intermediary. You want somebody who is sit in the middle and like, hey, take your TensorFlow model, give it to me. Let me take the TensorFlow model and process them into a form that the web browser can understand. And most likely this answer is going to be something like JSON or XML or something, but something that the browser can understand. So you take that, then you return the JSON or the XML, and then the browser render it. So that's what a serializers is doing. This is a two-way process, meaning you can also deserialize something. You can also take something from the browser, something like a JSON. So somebody go in there, change a couple of inputs. You want to take that and you want to say, hey, can I deserialize that back into Python or R or Ruby or MATLAB or SQL? Like that's kind of the motive of that. So I think that's where you miss out. I think the internet dropped off earlier.
So that what's the function of class meta, Sam?
What is the function of what?
Class meta class.
Oh, meta, right. So when you create a serializer, you can say what do you want to include in the serializer? What do you want it to serialize? So for example, I can have something like lead instructor. And this is going to be a new field, and this could be something like, I'm just going to say source lead instructor. They don't actually, there is nothing in here, but wait, hold on a second. I have this one. Okay, so let me show you that example instead. I can, for example, have this, and I can have my creator name, creator username, and then I can have serializers. Let me see if this is correct. Creator.username. So this is creator. Yes, .username. That's correct. This is correct because if you verify that from here, you can say that if I take a user object. So let me clear out all of that. If I say user.models.user.objects.last. Then I see that I have that item. I can take this and I can take the username and I get the name. So here I can use the same thing. I say take that user and then put the username and create something called creator username, and I can have my creator username in here. So all of this plus my creator username. So I can have my name, description, number of hours, and I can have expiry date. Yeah. So basically, why do we use it as a meta? Because these are just meta information for the serializers. This is where you do most of the work, and then finally, this is like what are the meta information. This is also something you can apply on here actually, but I haven't done that yet. So yeah, that's why.
Okay.
Yeah.
Similar like in class, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, meta is kind of a thing that is related to class itself, classes and stuff. It's not really like a Django thing or a DRF thing. Yeah. So anyway, once you created, sorry.
No one.
Yeah. Actually, any other questions apart from this? I'm probably gonna remove this thing just to keep it simple for you guys. But yeah, you can do that, and maybe later when we have time, we can show that. But any other question?
Hello, Sam.
Yeah, boleh. Django, do you have any question? Oh, Hussein, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So if the user hit
nggak masuk yang suaranya. We had some trouble with internet connection, Sam.
Oh yeah. maybe the question, if you guys know the question, what is Hussein about?
Hussein will ask the question from my account.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Mana suaranya ini?
Yeah, Hussein.
Yeah. Yeah. So if the user hit our API, the API will return this field value.
Yeah, this fields value are what will return. Not just hitting your API and return the value. That's also what they can create and edit and modify. This is also what they can do in the CRUD operation. So if you allow them to modify name, description, number of hours, unless you change the way the permission is handled, which I'm going to talk about as well. But here, this is what is exposed through the serializers. Meaning when you serialize, you're taking all of this value and you're serializing it. Yeah. So when the user hit the API, they are going to get the ID, the name, description, number of hours, and anything else that you specify in the fields.
Okay.
Yeah. And by default, they can also modify the values that they get from here. Yeah. But there are more advanced concepts you can learn later that will give you a lot more control. But we start from the basics first.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay, so if you guys have the serializers ready, then now the next thing you need to do is to wire that up into your views. So I want you to open up views.py. Again, Control P, Command P, not searching, not creating anything, but Control. If you type Control P, you can just type the name in there, views.py, press enter. Okay, now you open up views.py. So don't go and use your mouse, don't move around and scroll around because it's gonna be like starting to get a little bit long. Control P is always faster. And then from here, you get your views. So how do we create our views? We need to bring our serializers in there. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's say from serializers import. Okay, we have two serializers in there. So what are they called? They are called capstone serializer, and they are called the specialization serializer. So let's bring that two in there. Let's also bring it from our model. Always useful anyway. So this is our views.py now. So you just have to change that. And then this is all relative path. So basically serializer saying that go and look into my current directory and find the serializers which is in the same directory. Take that and find the two items that I want to import, right? If you have more, you can have more. If you want to import everything, you just do star. But I tend to not like that because it's not explicit. In Python, if you follow the Zen of Python, import this, you see that there is always the Zen of Python. The Zen of Python says that beautiful is better than ugly, explicit is better than implicit. So you always want to, as simple is better than complex, complex is better than complicated. It's kind of a philosophy. So you want to be explicit. You don't want to let people guess, like asking them to guess. So here there are some of these, and so I like to be explicit. So let me quit the. If you wonder how I did that, you just go to any Python shell and say import this. That will give you this is called the Zen of Python. But anyway, this is a bit of a sidetracking. Let's go back here. So like to be explicit. I don't like to use the asterisk. I like to be explicit. What exactly do I need? And what I need is the serializer that I just created with you guys, and I like the models, so I'll bring the models in there. Okay, so now you can create your views. And your views would actually be something like, well, this is crazy. It gave me everything I need already. Anyway, let me maybe do it step by step because if not, it's too fast. You need to have a view set. It can be a custom view, but here we're gonna inherit from the view sets. We're gonna inherit from the serializers view set. Notice in Visual Studio Code, if this thing that you import was not being used, it would give you a this dash here if you install the Python extension, or right now it's called the Pylance extension. So it tells me that, hey, you import this but you did not use this, right? So you need two things. The first thing is you need a serializer class. You need to tell it that, okay, which class do I use to manage this? So I'm going to say serializer class, and here, because I'm calling it capstone, I'm going to have capstone serializer. So that's very simple, straight up done. And now the underscore line is gone, the squiggly line is gone, right? Then the next thing I need to do is that I said when somebody query that, what do you want to return? So this is very commonly something like filter, where the creator is something like the request.user, or like the request or something. But in this case here, let's just put creator equals to 1. But you can change that, right? But in this, actually, right now we should just return everything. But let's say there is something like you want to return where when the expiry date is greater than the current date time. So you can import date time in here. Another thing I like to arrange in my imports is I like to import all the built-in one first. So built-in, and then here I import Django specific, and then this is app specific. I like to put them in a certain order. So this is what I like to do. And so in this case here, I'm only returning anything with an expiry date that is not this capstone has not expired. So anyone who ping my API, they're not gonna get a capstone from 2017. Because what's the point of that? Right? So I'm gonna only do a filter and I'm gonna say, hey, show me only those capstones with an expiry date that is not so here is GTE means greater or equal than. Greater than or equal. GTE. So GTE greater. Oops. GTE greater than or equal. Okay. If you want to put equal, you say EQ. If you want to say LTE, that's lesser. That's the other side, like lesser than. If you want to just have lesser than but not equal, then lesser than. GT is just greater than, not equal. I'm going to put GTE because GTE gave me exactly what I want, which is this one. And then I'm going to say date time today. Okay, so that's one way you can just filter all of that with expiry date that is, that is above certain dates. So that's what I want. If you said, oh, that's a little bit complicated, can we slow it down a bit more? Then don't worry about the whole thing here. Just forget about the whole thing and just put all. Just return all of that. Yeah. And then, so once you have these two things, you know how to create a second one. Very similar stuff. Class, specialization, view set, very similar stuff. You have the query set, and you have now you have specialization all, and then you have civilizers class, and now you will have your specialization serializers. Very similar stuff. Okay, so do that as well. If I show you Python manage.shell, now, oops, okay, wrong directory again. Okay, if I show you that shell now, right, and I say from apps.academia, no, from academia.capstone.models import specialization academia. I think it's apps.academia.
Sam,
Yo.
I want to add something.
Yeah, sure.
Where we use function for get, delete, update for the update to table.
Yeah.
It's in views or settings.
When you create the read you're saying that when you give the facilities of like create, read, update, do you change anything in the views, you mean? Is that the question?
Oh, okay, in the views.
Oh no. Okay, so the question was, if I want to change those things, do I change that in the views? Yeah, you actually change them in the view. For example, here you can also have something like define get query set, and this is gonna change how you this is gonna change the query set get to return maybe only capstone created by the user. So for example, you create a blog or e-commerce. You want the people who ping the API to only get the shop listings that are created by them themselves, not everyone's e-commerce. You know what I mean? Because if you don't control that, then what's gonna happen is they're gonna be able to get all of the entire e-commerce listing, whether or not they create that, which is probably not good for privacy. Because let's say Arjun used the e-commerce to create something, but then Wulan get to query that and get everything, or like Sam gets to query that and get everything, and also get what Arjun has created. So probably that's not what you want, right? So so that's something that you can define in the depth in this area, the get query set later on. Yeah. Anyway, let me see what am I missing here? Academia. Okay, from capstone.models. Okay, specialization. And then from specialization itself, if I say specialization dot objects dot all, I should see the first one that we just created. So this is what it's doing, right? But if I say I want to take that and I want to filter that by, if I want to filter that by where the creator has to be 1, okay, create and to fill. Did we create creator? Let's see, capstone, description, ID. Oh, okay, this is actually capstone, not specialization. So specialization doesn't have that, right? So we're gonna say go in here and import capstone instead, and we say capstone objects, and we say filter, and we want to say filter where the user is our user, and the user would be something like user ID equals to 1, for example. What did we say here? What did it say here? Name, specialization, capstone dot objects dot filter. Oh, not user but creator. So creator equals to 1. And now we say, okay, there's nothing that has been created yet. But if I go ahead and create something, then it would appear. You can do that. Yeah, you can do that. You can change the type of request and stuff. But let me show you how to do it with model view set first, because it provides you all of those things out of the box without you having to change those things. You don't have to create them one by one. So let me show you that first very quickly, and then we see how to do it one by one. But if you use the model view set, it will provide you all of that. So model view set already gave you all the create, read, update, all of that stuff is already provided to you. Okay, so it's already given to you. Let's go ahead now and save the views.py. You should have something like that now in views.py. And let's move on to the last part. And those things that I don't use, where are those? Datetime, I don't use them, so I'm going to just remove that. Serializers, I don't use that, so let me just delete that as well. I guess we're good to go, right? So we're just going to save the views.py. Now let's move on to urls.py. So again, Control P, urls.py. So now this is the final part. Okay, so I'm going to summarize that really quickly. First thing you need to do is to create your models. So first step, your models need to exist. After your models, make migration. After you do that, migrate. So all of this is simple, like Python manage.py, make migrations, like this, Python manage.py, migrate, that's that. And then once you've done that, you start to work on your serializers. You start to work on serializers. Serializers bring the model in and then define what fields do you want. So like fields, those things you want, those things that you want in there. And then finally, not finally, but step number 5, you create your views, views.py. In your views.py, what you really want is to just bring in your serializers and just wire them into your views. And then finally, change the URL. That is kind of the a process of going from start to finish. Okay, so now URLs. Let's finally do this. So here we say admin. This URL is what determines how we enter the URL. So for example, we go in here and we type admin, and this works. But if I change this admin into something like admin, I don't want this, I want to call it backend, because admin is too easy to predict and people are going to try and attack that. For example, you worry about that. If I run now, it won't work now. It says admin, what, don't know what it is, right? Did not try anything, did not match anything. So I need to now change this to backend. So URL is sort of a way to control what is the URL you want to entry, the entry point to the specific part of your app. So I want you to just go ahead and try and make sure that your admin still works, or if you name it backend, you can call it backend, but make sure that everything still works, nothing is breaking. So you verify that by going into Python manage.py, start run server, and go into your browser and make sure that everything still works. This is almost the final part. We're almost there, so give me a bit more. In your backend, you should see a list of all your actions. This is a history, all the recent actions. We're not worried about that. We're gonna close that off. We're gonna close that off. Just gonna keep that one. let's take a look at what they want us to do now. So we've done all of that. We created serializers, we created a view. So if you follow my process, it's very similar to the official documentation, but the official documentation goes through the same thing. You go through the model, and then you go into serializers, you create the serializers, and then from there you create the views, and very simple stuff. You create the views, you change the views. Once you have the views, you go into your URLs. This is where we need to do, right? So I'm following very similar learning path if you follow the official documentation. So I always recommend, like, if you want to learn Django, you want to learn like Django REST framework and stuff, just forget about tutorials and stuff. Just go to the official doc and read the official doc. The official doc is so good. There's really no reason you need to be like, oh, let me go to like some sign up, pay for some Udemy courses and stuff. There's really no reason for that. It's all in here already. Okay, this is also very clear what we need to do, very clear. So let's go ahead and see what they want us to do here, right? If you have this open up in on one end, I'm just gonna give you the quick start here. You can see like most of it is very straightforward. They said, okay, the first thing you need to do is to wire in the REST framework. So let's import that. Let's start from that. So I'm gonna say Django from REST framework import routers. Whoops. And then you create a routers. So when you create a router, you can say routers.default router. This is the default one that gives you all the default behavior, and you can, from here, you can register all your views. So your views are not there yet, so let's import those things in there as well. So let's say from views import, what do we name them? We name them capstone view set, specialization view set. So capstone view set, this is from capstone.views. Okay, so from capstone.views, like that. This is not in the same directory, so be careful there. So this is not from the same directory, this is in the capstone directory. So I said from, go into capstone, find the views.py under the capstone. So this is why I do it that way. Okay, and then you can then register. So router.register, and you put in capstone, and you put that thing in there. And same thing here, you do it for the not the user, but for the specialization. I'm just gonna quite track. Don't really want to type the whole thing in there. Too long. So specialization view set. Perfect. Okay. So again, you have to remember what you name it. It's like sometimes I forgot and I just switch it very quickly. You switch it by using Control 1, Control 2, or Control Tab. Control Tab to Control Tab give you the other one here, and then Control Tab back, like very quickly. So Control Tab would switch between these two. So learn those shortcuts. I think if you're gonna like be teaching a lot in Visual Studio Code and in Jupyter Notebook and stuff like that, learn all those shortcuts because it makes you a lot faster. You don't have to use your mouse as often. Switching. Sometimes I use the mouse just to show you what I'm doing, but when I'm actually coding myself, I don't actually even touch the mouse at all. Just completely just using the keyboard. But I would say like it just adds some sort of productivity that pays off in the long run. So might as well learn that. So once you wired up your routers, you register them, and once you've done that, you just have to change the path in here. So for example, I can go in here now and I can just say path and include. Okay, now include, where is the include from? The include has to be imported because it says here, wait, hold on a second, you haven't even have the include yet. So include is right from the URLs, so you just have to add a comma and say bring that in as well, like that. And now it would go away and you have the include. And if we save this and if everything still works, we can now go to our main website, remove that. Okay, let's see what's no modules name academia.capstone. Where is it? From in the urls.py in line 19 here. Okay, so we don't need this. We just have to say capstone like that. Okay. Which means we can actually concatenate them. Oops, this is a lot of things. This is why you don't want to trust them. Capstone like this. Capstone view set like this. So you don't need like two separate, just one line of code. And then you refresh the page. Voila, done. All of that is set. If you don't like this to be on the main, you just have to change it to API. And then now, if you do your main, it's not going to work now. You just have to put an API after that. like this, then it still works. Okay, so up to you. If you want a main page to be something else, you want a main page to be like, hello, welcome to Algorithm Portal, or like welcome to I don't know what you want to have on the main page. If you want to have that, then you just have your main page doing something else, and you put this on a different one. So in this case, I put them in the API, and in the API, you just link it there. What happens if you did not define router? So if you mean if you forgot about this one, you mean? What was the question? If you forgot about this one, like this, you mean? So router doesn't exist, so it would complain and say, hey, router doesn't exist. So router needs to exist. So here you create a default router and you register all the different views you want to use, and you give it to them here. So this allows you to then go ahead and say, because I have capstone, I can put an API here and I can put /capstone, and it would bring me to capstone. And if I put /track, because I call it track, I'll put it in here. Then it opens up. Oops. Okay, what did it say? Specialization view set should include a serializer, and we did not do that. So let's go and take a look at what we messed up here. Serialization query set specialization dot objects dot all serializer class serialization.
Maybe in line 18, Sam, it is supposed to be serializer without s. Serializer underscore class.
Oh yeah, good catch. So yeah, when you refresh the page, it should work now. That's it. Then you get all the views returned. This is gonna return a very nice view, but you can also return just a JSON like that. So your mesh, usually when you want to return a service that communicates with another service, you want it to be a JSON. So in this case here, you can just attach the question mark, a query parameter, format equals to JSON, or you can change that in the settings to say always return JSON as default. You can do that. I'll show you how to do that. But right now, let's keep it to this view because it's nice. So with that done, you now have two views registered. I'm going to pause here a bit because maybe you're trying to like follow along all of this stuff. There's a lot going on. But yeah, generally the rule of thumb is you want to make sure that you follow some sort of system. And here, the way it goes is I create the models, I create the serializers. I use both the model and the serializers to create the views, and then I wire the views to the URL, right? Because none of and this is very logical because the serializers have to import from the model. So you have to create the model first, because if the model doesn't exist, what does it can't import the model. And if you cannot import the model, then what do you want to put into the meta? Nothing, right? So then you say, what about views? Views import from the serializers. So serializers need to exist first, because if it doesn't exist, what are you going to bring in? Nothing, right? So it follows some sort of logical process in here. Now I want to show you that in the specialization itself, let me change it to capstone now. And in the capstone itself, oh, there's nothing. So let me change it to specialization back, right? There is ID, name, description, and number of hours. What happens if I take the name away and I save it and I refresh the page? What happened here? Name is gone. All right. So you can say, well, I want to return the API. My API needs to return this, but if the user is querying the API, I don't want to return who is the creator of the specialization. I just want to return important information. The creator is not important. You can take that away and you can choose that. So here in this case here, it doesn't return to you anymore. So if we add that back in, let me add it right after name like this, so you can see the difference. If I add it right after the description, you see that name comes after description now. So ID, description, and then name comes after that, because I add it right after that. So I'm gonna probably open this one next on the left so you can compare these two, and I'm gonna stop here so you have time to catch a breath. And what's also cool is you can also experiment with that by creating your own from this front end itself. You can do a post request. So I'm gonna open up a inspect element here. Now I'm gonna zoom in all of this back in here, and this is my network request. I'm gonna say preserve log. That's okay. and I can then post a JSON request. So I can say create another one. This time I'm going to call it machine learning. And I'm going to say number of hours will be 100, or let's say 85 hours. And I'm going to say the description of that, I'm going to say description of that is machine learning courses for, oh, let me see, where's my participants list? Machine learning courses for beginners and practitioners alike. Okay, done. And if I start to create a post now, it does a post request, which is confirmed from here. You see that there is a post request here. If you click on it, you see there's a header. It says it makes a post request and 201 created successfully. And now it exists here. If we go into our back end and we create our look at our specializations, we're going to be able to find machine learning 85 hours. That's exactly what we created from our API. Awesome. So now we have our API there. We have the post request successfully created 201. Okay. You can also, what you can also do is you can also go into the details of each one of them. You can press on one, it goes directly to the first one. You can hit 2. So API track 2 goes to the second one. And I say, oh, wait, hold on a second. This is not meant for beginner. It's actually a lot more intermediate than that. So how do we use our JSON API to change things? Well, we can use a patch or put, right? So if I again open up my console and I look at my network and I scroll down here and I say this is not for beginners, I'm going to change that now. I'm going to say for practitioners with some industry, with some related experience. I don't know. Okay, so now I'm gonna call it that, and I'm gonna call it intermediate machine learning. Intermediate machine learning, and instead of 85 hours, it's only gonna be 67 hours. And I'm gonna do a put or do a patch. The difference is that put, one is basically just putting the ones that are modified. Patch is just taking the whole thing and just replacing the whole thing. So let's just do a put here, and now it got changed. So our API is responding as well. Let's check the specialization here. Let's refresh the page. Bam, got updated as well. So your API, we already tested the create, we tested the create, read, update. Now we haven't tested delete. Let's delete this. So let's create the delete. So again, you can check all of this by looking at your request. You see that now you make a put request, you get a 200 request code, right? And we can say, what if we delete that? Then you can delete this. It says, are you sure you want to delete that? If you say delete, and then now you make another delete request. So delete request, you see this is the put request, this is the delete request. It says request method is delete, 200, okay. So now it's successful. And now if you go back to track, you're gonna see there's only one left. Okay, so let's go ahead and create the machine learning one again. Or let's this time do people analytics or something. I don't know. Let's call computer vision. And let's make it 60 hours. And we're going to call it computer vision for dummies. And we create that, we post that, and now it's created. So let's go ahead and refresh the page. We should see 1 and 3. So that's how we done our CRUD, our create, our read, our update, and our delete. We done through all the 4 of them, but now you have your JSON API. So I guess this is kind of a nice way to stop here to sort of try and understand what happened in here and why it's important. Because API just gives you all of these ways to communicate with other servers and other services, and also allows you to decouple your service from one to another. So for example, in here, we're decoupling that. We're saying that there's a backend API service and there's a front end. The front end could be something like you can communicate with this through your RStudio, through a Jupyter notebook, through anything. As a matter of fact, I think just very recently we did a lot of some of the work in here as well. Okay, so here you can create, like for example, this is all REST framework stuff. So so this is what I showed you earlier, where now the person can query that and you can deploy that anywhere. We used to deploy on Heroku, but Yeah, you can deploy anywhere, but you can now ping like, okay, if I ping this API and I can add query parameters, so what about query parameters? How do we do that? That's also something we can learn, but maybe we should schedule this into like the next one. We can slowly make it more complicated and stuff, but I do want to show you a few things that are very cool. So in here, when you get that, here, for example, in this case, you're querying and you only want add type equals to 1, device OS equals to 11, country code equals to this one, threshold equals to this one, campaign. You can set up all of this stuff. So people can query your API and you can connect with a lot of other services. So this is also where you start to build into automation stuff. You can connect this with like HubSpot or GitHub or Salesforce or anything like that, where they just ping an API, they get exactly the same thing, then they create the audience, whatever those things are. And before we go, right, let me show you zoom in, and we're gonna say change directory. Where do I have architect again? Pega and architect. Okay, so we're gonna go in there and okay, and we're gonna say work on architect, and we're gonna say python manage.py. Oh, actually we need to do a couple of things, so let's go ahead and do that as well. Split that in there, change directory to Pega, and work on this one. Doesn't need to, but we can do an npm run dev watch. Okay, so this is running, and now let's go ahead and do a actually we need to split another one. So this is also the same thing, change that to Pega architect, and okay, now you can resume the video because now nothing, I'm like that is done. But anyway, so once
in progress.
Once I run this, I have this going. I'm gonna open up my code editor here, but before I do that, let me just go in here and say python manage.py run server. So you can actually see the whole thing running. So you can see some, I just want you to have some sort of assurance that you can actually scale this really well, because REST framework provides you a lot of things. For example, one of the blog that I just wrote, like this is a very good article. You can go and read about that. Since you know all of this stuff already, you should go and read about that. It teaches you how to create custom permission. It teaches you how to create, for example, you can go into REST framework, you can set up different permission classes. So if you look at this and you go back to your code editor, so that's gonna be Visual Studio Code. Let me open up code here. If you go into settings.py, again, Control P, settings.py, and then you find authentication, you see that there is this REST framework classes. Okay, that's one. But what you can do is that you can actually add these REST framework classes to say only get this REST framework if the person is authenticated. You can do that. And you can also let people log in and log out using our API. For example, if you look at this one example here, it says all you need to do is to just add an API authentication. You can name it anything you want. So let me go and do that. urls.py. I can go ahead and just add one, and I can call this off. I don't need to call the whole thing. Just save it. And now if I go into my service here and I say off, log in, and now all of a sudden I request to log in. So basically you can protect your API in many different ways. This is one way to protect it. You said, hold on a second, I need to know that you're a member of Algorithm team, because if not, I don't want you to come in and like, oh, query our API and get all, because if you publish your stuff on GitHub and stuff, everyone is going to say, oh, that's an API, and they're going to just use it. So how do you create those kind of mechanism to say, hold on a second, I need you to log in, make sure that you're authenticated before you do that, and I can also log you out, so log out as well. So all you need to do is, I think this article gives you a lot of those things already. I explained a lot of those things. How do you set up like where the permission is only authenticated or not? This will default to not allowing anything. So how you need to do that is to just set it up. So you can just copy that and go into settings.py and paste it somewhere. I usually like to be clean about my things, so I usually just open up a space where I say somewhere like between here, I like to say something like this is where I control API authentication stuff, settings. So this is somewhere like that, and I put in my classes in here and stuff. You need to import the REST framework from the top, but I did not import that. So yeah, that's there. Like this. So if I save this now, and I come back here, and I try to do the same thing here, it still works because I'm logged in. But if a person that is not logged in, let me use an anonymous use an incognito browser, try to log in. Oops, authentication credentials were not provided. Not provided. It says no, you can't view this because it's very specific to Algorithma's own product team, and you're not a member of the product team, you shouldn't be able to see our ratings. For example, right? You say you can query for our ratings and stuff like that, but only if you're part of the product team, and if you're not, you need to log in. So you can also ask the guy to log in, and the guy can log in through authentication off. Why? Because that's what you said. Okay, so off login, sorry, off login. And if I do that, and I put Samuel, and I put my password, and then now I can access again. Okay, so anyway, that is a quick demo of how to set those things up. All you need to do is to drop this into settings.py. I like to be tidy by putting them somewhere where everything is related. So here I'm going to put authentication, and this is where everything is controlled in here. But the whole thing is a lot longer than that. So if you really want to spend some time on it, learn about that. But let me just run through like some very important main points. So how do you bring security as a data scientist or data engineer? How do you bring some security in here? First is authentication. That's really good. Throttling is also really good. Throttling is also provided to you for free. Those are more advanced concepts that I don't have time to talk about because this is supposed to be beginner friendly, right? But at some point, maybe in the future, in version 3 or version 4, depending on if you guys enjoy the session or not, we can do that. But throttling is kind of like that. It's like trying to limit that. So here, for example, I said, hey, if you're anonymous, you can only ping our API 100 times per day. Because if you ping any more than that, then Sam is going to scream at me because the server cost is going to be high. Naoko is going to scream at me because the server cost is going to be high. And Vanita is going to scream at me because server cost is going to be high. So you can set up certain limits and say, hey, you can only ping the API. And how do you create this? Again, it's all within REST framework. So copy all of this, go into settings, like that. Oops, I forgot a comma here, like that. And then format it a bit, like that, and done. Really, really simple. All of this is provided out of the box. You know how much trouble you need to do with if you use something that is not provided. Like if you try and use something like Flask and you write your own logic and say, hey, if a certain IP address keep pinging the server, maybe somebody is spamming the server, and that way it could run the server cost very high. Just ask Tiara what happened. Some of you still remember what happened with when Tiara when there was a server in Azure and it was running up like thousands of dollars in a few minutes, right? So throttling is also a way you can do that. Let me talk about the last one. Last one is permission. Let me show you permission. In this case here, I created some specific, this is all my user specific, this is not provided by REST framework, but you can use that. So I created a specific is created or read only. So here, this is very handy. Why? Because it says that, hey, if David is the creator of this capstone, then David can change the name and the description of the capstone. He can do that. So he's provided the permission in here, permission class. So this is where you define your Serializer class. This is where you define your query set. Here I said, define a permission where if David is the creator of the capstone, then David is allowed to change the description of the capstone, the number of hours and stuff. But if somebody else, let's say Yosia, is trying to access the API, and Yosia want to change the name of that, Yosia is not allowed to do that. Okay? So this is very useful in a lot of real-world situations. For example, like Arjun, you created an e-commerce app. You created a listing. So e-commerce have listing, kan? And you say listing price is, let's say, $6. Let's say IDR 6,000, 60. If you do not set this kind of permission properly, then what happens is anyone who can ping your API can also modify your API. So anyone can go in there and change the listing price to be 50,000, 40,000, 30,000. You don't want that to happen. You want anyone to be able to use the API to get the listing, to be able to do a GET request, but not a put, a patch, or a post request. That is very common. So you said anyone can come in, query, and see how much price am I listing, so they can do a GET request, but nobody can come in there and change the pricing of my listing. If I offer the item at 60,000, you need to either pay up or go away, right? So you cannot do a put or patch or post. So you can also set permission classes like that, just like how you set serializer classes like that. There's also ways to do that. But very similar stuff, you know, survey serializer and then query set filter. I can say filter where the ownership equals to where I'm the owner. I can filter for that and stuff. So those are things like that you can do as well. Let me see if I can have my framework running. Okay, the port is already in use because I haven't terminated this port. Let me terminate that port and let me run that again. Run server. Okay, done. Okay, so let me open that up. Okay, I haven't really added the 8000 to. You may need to add that to. So go into settings and you go into allowed host all the way at the bottom. Search for that allowed host and you can change things in here. So what do you say? You may need to add 127.0.0.1. That's a local host. So add that in here. Okay, save that. Okay, now let's go ahead and try and run server again. And let's go ahead and do our localhost. Run that. Okay, now it's working. Cool. And let me sign in really quickly. Oops. Okay, now I'm logged in. So this whole thing is Django REST framework in the backend, right? So I have my Django REST framework. So for example, if I go into my studio, I should be able to see all my assessments. Oh, I haven't created any. Okay, I did create a few. And those are returned as a JSON. So what happened here is that if I show you my REST framework, I'm going to inspect my element. And I'm going to show you my network. If I do a refresh of this page again, or let me go to dashboard and then click on studio again. So I show you what is happening here. So you can see some real life production apps. And I go and look at my network. So what happened is I actually make a request. I make a request. And you can see that from my network activities. So here, all surveys. And here it says query for this, localhost survey, API surveys, all surveys. If I take all of that and I put them into my browser, you will be able to see all of that, right? So this is all the same thing, all the surveys, and if I look at my API route, I see all of this. I see what about my assessment takers. I get all of these results, and I can again create, edit, read, delete. And here I have all of this stuff in here. I can click on that, and it will bring me to that data analytics maturity assessment. And again, if I look at my yeah, actually let me stop doing all the refreshing and all that stuff, but let me just click on a simple one, temporary new assessment. The main way of using REST framework as the backend, and then on the front end we can use something like React or anything like that, but that's kind of it. So for now I'm just gonna stop here because I think I already covered way too much that is. I don't plan to go into all these things because I think it's a little bit too advanced, but I feel like I should just introduce you to REST framework first, so you understand, you know, what are things, you know, why is it useful, how is it helpful and stuff. But yeah, that's kind of it. Maybe any questions so far? Because it's already 2 p.m. I said I want to end at 2, so you have time to, you know, ideally all the learning day we should end earlier, so you have more time to, like, you know, maybe spend time with your friends, with your family, with your co-workers, go out, have an early evening, or go home to sleep, whatever you want to do, you know, or go to a mall or something. So ideally I think like that's kind of one thing we want to do is like try to end the productive learning day a little bit earlier. And, you know, maybe on Saturday, Sunday, you can rewatch the video and try and follow up the parts where you left off, where you did not manage to follow up. But so far, let's take 1 or 2 questions. Any questions? Anyone have questions so far?
I have Sam.
Yeah, sure.
Di sini berarti bisa sekalian bikin dokumentasinya juga ya, Sam?
Oh yeah,
dokumentasi dari API-nya.
Yeah. Oh, that's actually a really good point. So let me show you like list again, change directory again to this again. Let me zoom in again. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna again do a Python work on, and we say Python manage run server. Yeah, and so the documentation you can also list where you want the docs to be. So for example, mine is in here. If I look at my urls.py, it says what? It says this is all the website. Oh, docs. Docs is where you find it. Okay, so I'm gonna go to Docs. So this is again the same thing that I'm teaching you, the same technique. So I'm gonna go into localhost now and click on that one, and instead, so the way I created this stuff is that this is called a web app. So everything is like nothing gets refreshed here. So if I create a simple one, let's say this is for human and people analytics course. And just to show you I'm not cheating, if I open up my DB, you can see that, you know, I will be creating that right away later. But for now, I'm just going to create a password protected course. I'm going to say this is people analytics. Wait, did I spell it correctly? People. Okay. Set an expiry date. I don't care, 20, maybe 30. And give it to algorithm. And let's create that. Okay, it's created already. So now it's already in my DB. And what does it do when it says it's already created? Is that it push it to my DB, right? It makes a post request. So from here, I can go in there and I can say, well, let's go and create that. So I'm going to say people analytics dimension and do all these things. But you asked about docs, so I'm not going to show you this. I'm going to just show you the docs right away. So you have the assessment reports here. This one is also API, right? It's all REST framework in the backend, and it takes the REST framework and it generates all the nice UX in here. I can, for example, take this and toggle this. I can play around with this one. I can change this. And all of this is automatically generated. So for example, if somebody take an assessment, immediately they get a report. And I'm going to add a PDF report export here, where you can export this into a nice PDF. But all of this assessment, I don't have time to go through all of this stuff, but it's a pretty nice project that I'm working on. So it give you so when you do a self-assessment, by the end of it, you can benchmark against the cohort. So you can say, how do I compare against the rest of the, let's say the Phoenix cohort or Agon cohort, and how do I compare against them, and what is my strength and what is my, so this is like percentile. It says that here you rank 73% better than this and that. So yeah, you can create a data science maturity assessment in here as well. So all of this is all REST framework in the backend. All of this that I should show you here is all REST framework in the backend. So if you're interested, I can teach you more about this maybe in the next one. I want to maybe answer David's question first. So documentation, let me show you documentation. So where is my documentation? Let me check my URLs. My URLs say my documentation is in here, docs, and then version. So I'm going to say docs and version 1. And my documentation is all automatically generated. So I can say, okay, how do I create a new user? Here. How do I update a user? Here. And what are the things I need? Here. So all of this is automatically generated for me. How do I create a choice map? Here. So all of this is basically going to look into your models.py and generate all of this for you. How do I do authentication? Here. Give you all of this, right? So all of this is like coming out of the box for free. So I understand that REST framework has a bit of a learning curve. Like it's not easy to have to learn all of those things, but once you learn the basics of it, and hopefully I did a good job enough to teach you up to the basic. Hopefully I did a decent enough job, right? And once you start to explore on it and expand on it, it's very production ready. You can create really, really good products, good projects. So skill competency framework, this one goes to that one here. Unless but I don't know, I think I'm running out of time. I don't want to go into that. I want to show you like how you can do the assessment on your own. It's also very beautiful UI and stuff, but for now, let's not worry about that, but just close down this one. But yeah, the documentation question, yeah, that's you can generate your own as well. Yeah. Actually, even the one that was provided to you, like the one that you get up, this one is a pretty good documentation actually so far. You know, right now I already closed the server, so I need to stop the server and stuff. But you see that what in the back end is making all these requests, get requests, you know, get requests, post requests. So all of this is in the back end. So yeah, I mean, how do you guys like the session so far? Learn some new stuff?
Many.
Do you yeah, is that like you know, something new that you learned? Is that going to be useful to you? Any questions? Anyone? Sorry, I try to be realistic about like what we can fit within 3 hours. I mean, if we can do this as a series, we can go on, and we have like a lot of more like series going on, and we can do like, you know, what about building the front end and the UI and stuff? I can teach you all of that as well. Nowadays I do a lot of coding in like JavaScript, ES6, Python and stuff. So those things are also things that I can you know, help explain. I'm also trying to build out the cryptography clause for algorithm next year. So next year when we hopefully we launch the cryptography clause where people can go in there and learn about that. So that's also something I'm trying to do. So, but yeah, we try to make time and find time to to upgrade our skills. Okay, no questions.
Andoyo, Sam.
Andoyo.
Andoyo have question. Yeah, Doy, yeah, Doy.
Hey, Doy.
Doy. Hey, Doy.